Read at your own risk. Hey Tilda, to think that I would be done in by my own student. Yuji, you were really a pain until the end. Cough. A white-haired man laid on the ground. His body bloodied as he murmured softly. Sensei. Next to him, a young man, clearly still a high student, was tearing up his body, covered by black tattoos that were slowly fading away. His expression was full of guilt as he gritted his teeth. It's all my fault. You wouldn't be in this situation if you didn't have to hold back. After Yuji was forced to devour more the last 5 fingers out of the initial 20 fingers in one go, the inevitable happened. Sukuna managed to completely take over Yuji's body. Thankfully, Satoru Gojo, the strongest sorcerer, had managed to escape the seal he was previously in. What followed was an epic fight between Gojo and Sukuna, a fight of apocalyptic proportion that had completely changed the landscape of Tokyo. The result of this fight was Sukuna defeat. He had been completely eradicated from Yuji body, and from now on, the number of curses in Japan would radically drop. But, even though the result was beautiful, Yuji couldn't accept this. After all, while Sukuna fought with all his might intending to kill, Gojo on the other was severely limited since he couldn't kill Sukuna without killing his own student. This was the reason why Gojo laid down now, while being mortally wounded. So much that no reverse curse techniques could heal him. Haha, cough. Remember what you asked me back then after you swallowed the second finger? Yuji, who closed his eyes, nodded. I asked you who would win in a fight between you and Sukuna. Hey Tilda, I told you right. I would win. It was on those last words that Satoru Gojo, the strongest exorcist, closed his eyes. Even after death, he never lost his smile. 3ch1. I need to become a shinagami. Soul Society. Do you think he is dead? In a clearing, 2 young kids were looking at a white-haired man who was laying on the ground, his eyes covered by a black shawl. What kind of questions are you asking? Of course he is dead. Otherwise, how could he be here? Ah, Tilda, no, I meant is he dead, like really dead? Well, who knows? Anyway, whether he is dead or not doesn't concern us. The academy opens its doors in a few days. We should prepare. You are right. Let's go. After those words, the 2 kids began to walk away, never looking behind them. Man, this world is so harsh. Even kids have no compassion. The moment they left, the white-haired man, Satoru Gojo, opened his eyes. It has already been a few hours since he entered this bizarre world. At first, he was rather disoriented, but after playing dead for a few hours and listening to different people, he had a better understanding of his situation. This was the afterlife. Despite how surprising this was, Gojo wouldn't be who he was if he let something like that bother him. Even though he died, he did manage to punch the greatest curse of mankind into oblivion. Haha, Tilda, those kids better make a statue in my honor. Perhaps Nobara will even write a book about me. Thinking about his students, his smile dimmed a little. He had come to like the little team he was in charge of, and he had to admit that leaving them made him sad. But at least they were alive. Well, enough about this. Moping is useless. The most important thing at the moment was to know what he would do. Raising his hand, he looked at them carefully while frowning. I can feel a weird energy flowing through my body. But this isn't cursed energy. He didn't know how to describe it, but it was something purer. As the name said, curse energy was born from the malice of the human heart. From it, monsters known as curses could see the day, and people known as sorcerers used this energy to deal with them. In the first place, I am dead, right? So how come I can feel sleepy, tired, and hungry? This was another problem he didn't really understand. But the worst. He frowned as he focused. This lasted for a few seconds before he sighed. For some reason, I have managed to keep the 6 eyes, but I seem to be unable to use limitless currently. Is it because the difference in energy? I will have to look into that later. This was a heavy blow. Since he didn't know how to use his current energy, for now, he could do nothing. Even though the six eyes would be extremely useful in helping him control this new energy source, losing limitless means that he had lost more than 80% of his full power. Thankfully, he wasn't in a dangerous zone or anything of the like. I do not have enough information. I have no money, no house, and I am wearing some weird ass kimono. Man, this is really a great start. I feel like the hero in an RPG. Even though the situation was rather dire, he was still able to laugh at it. It wasn't because he was naively thinking that everything would be alright. It was just that he refused to bow down to adversity. Standing up, he began to follow the road the two kids took. He could feel a large cluster of energy like the one flowing through his body. Those were his first steps in the soul society. Dash 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 dash. After he left the place where he was previously laying down, it didn't take long for him to see what was most likely a city. Though, after reaching it, calling it a village or a slum would have been better. Once there and after asking a few questions, he surprisingly got answers rather easily. After all, most, if not everyone here had once been in the same situation he currently was. So this place is really the afterlife. Sitting on a rock on another side of the city, Gojo sighed wistfully. Somewhere in the corner of his heart, he had still been a little unbelieving, but now, there were no doubts. But what really ticked him off about his current situation wasn't him dying or appearing in the afterlife. I fought to protect the world, and after my death, I am sent to the slum of the afterlife. Or perhaps is it because I was cheating? But hell, it shouldn't have been enough to offset my good karma. Right. He joked a little to himself before finally sighing once again. If all the information he received were accurate, then, he was in the Soul Society. More precisely in the 80th North District of a zone called the Rukongai. The zone where lost souls generally appeared. But out of all the information he received, the one that particularly caught his attention was Shinagami and Hollow. After dying, people generally had two destinations depending on their luck. Either their souls were guided by Shinagami and they could enter the Soul Society, or they became hollow and entered the Hueco Mundo. This is truly like sorcerers and curses. What's more, hollows are born from souls. And Shinagami are also evolved souls. Basically, they use the same energy source, like how sorcerers and curses use cursed energy. What's more, Shinagami can visit Earth to kill hollows. This was very important. He didn't know what happened after he died. Even though he did manage to completely seal Sukuna inside Yuji, who could know what would happen if he could go back to Earth. Of course, this is with the assumption that time flows the same. At least, from the clothes and way of acting, he was sure that this heaven had a relation with Japan. But there were too many unknowns. But thankfully, he now had a solution. I need to become a Shinigami. 4ch2, first kill, 1. Sue, where the hell I am? A young-looking silver-haired man stood in a forest while munching on hard bread. He couldn't help but frown as he looked at his surroundings. Hey, you, are you sure you aren't messing with me? Looking behind him, he glared at a brawny man who immediately began to shiver under his stare. It has already been about 1 week since he left the 80th North District, which was one of the worst districts ever. On his way, he had been mugged many times by different groups of bandits. But since they didn't hold any killing intent, he simply beat them up after taking away everything they had and all the information they could give. The one shivering behind him currently was his latest victim, and he finally decided that having a guide could help speed things along. Sir, I am not lying, this is really the most direct way to enter the First West District. Gojo frowned a little at how he went from north to west because he got lost on the way, but aside from that, he was happy to know that he was closer to his goal. The 360 districts of the Soul Society were divided in 4 directions and 80 districts for each zone. The closer the district was to the Seraiti, the better the environment. What's more, the only way to pass the shinagami test for the academy was to reach one of the 4 first districts. Hey, even in the afterlife, the distinction between classes still exists. Chortling to himself, he ignored the cowardly bandit and began to walk while whistling. Behind him, the bandit hesitated a little and thought about fleeing, but once he remembered how that monster in front of him beat up his entire team, he could only hide his desire to flee. This small movement wasn't missed by Gojo, but he didn't care. He was more busy trying to understand the energy flowing through his body. Even though he was currently unable to use limitless or any of his cursed techniques, he didn't waste his time, and now he at least knew how the energy flowing inside his body was called Raryoku, the inner energy which flows through all beings. At first, he was surprised at the fact that a soul could feel hunger, be tired, or even bleed for that matter. But the answer was surprisingly easy. The more Raryoku a soul had, the closer their body's function became to humans. High-level souls could even have sexual relationships and give birth to children. In short, the soul society wasn't that much different from the normal human society. Well, I wonder how strong I am in this world. Those bandits were rather easy to beat. But he refused to compare himself to them. He needed to meet one of the so-called shinagami and see how far he stood. I also need to master this technique. Perhaps I should learn the power system of this world. The only thing he could do as of now was to strengthen his body with this mysterious energy. But he hoped this wasn't all. He was no slouch when it came to martial art, but nothing beat the feeling of being all-powerful and completely untouchable. Secretly, he also hoped that learning the power system here would help him be able to use limitless again. No matter, I am a genius. It shouldn't take long for me to learn. At the very least, he believed in the power. At the very least, he believed in the power of the Rokugan, 6 eyes. Back then, it was thanks to the combination of his Rokugan and his limitless that he was hailed as the strongest sorcerer. Thanks to it, his control over his cursed energy had been so perfect that it feels like he had an unlimited amount of energy. Even now, he was sure that he just needed 2 or 3 direct examples on how to use this energy to get it. The only thing stopping him now was the fear of messing up his energy point by making the energy flow in the wrong way. A phenomenon extremely common for the members of his clan who tried to master limitless even though they didn't have the talent necessary for that. He might be a genius, no scratch that. He might be an unprecedented genius, but he knew more than anyone else how dangerous it was to experiment without any frame of reference. They continued to walk like that for a while in total silence. The signs of life were becoming more evident once again, and he was sure that he was coming closer to the city. It was then, huh! A sharp scream resonated. The birds, startled, began to flee away. Looking at the direction of the scream, Gojo's brain immediately went into overdrive. His vision suddenly shifted, reaching farther than anyone should be able to see. Finally, he was able to capture the scene. 2 seemingly young children, one a brown-haired girl and the other a silver-haired boy, were facing a red monster with a mask on its face. The girl was holding a sword, but from her posture and shivering hands, it was clear that she was still a newbie. What's more, from the blood flowing from